Hello and welcome to episode 2 of LizardGenes Gaming Podcast. Now, as I said from the last episode, we were playing Far Cry, and that's what we're going to be discussing in this podcast. So just to kind of open it up, we've got myself and we've got
Wadanny.
And we have been playing Far Cry, as I say, and we're just going to go through our first impressions first of all. And I played Far Cry before. I love Far Cry. This was your first introduction to Far Cry. You've never played Far Cry before.
That's true.
So,
very true.
I mean, just to kind of start off with, what did you make of the game?
I was impressed by the game because previously I had kind of written it off as not my setting, not my type of game.
Mm-hmm.
I found the open world idea a bit aimless and I felt as if I'd be wandering without anything to do, and like it would just be these skirmishes against guys with jeeps and, as we later discovered, boats.
Oh god, yeah.
Which we'll get to later. But no, my impression of the game, do you mean sort of initially or overall, now having played it?
Just overall.
Very good game. Very good. It changed, it did what I didn't think was possible at the venerable age I am now, which is it changed my outlook on that type of game. Sort of, open world shooter.
Yeah, I think it successfully straddles open world choice, freedom of choice, and linear missions. A bit like GoldenEye, because remember that mission with the satellite. You have to get up to the satellite, and you can choose how to get. You see your objective from a distance, so you've got a linear, start and end. You know what you've got to do. You're not aimlessly wandering.
Yeah.
But how you choose to get there is up to you. And we chose like the back way up the cliffs and up that kind of mine shaft.
Yeah.
And of course, when a strategy might fail, you can kind of
try it again.
Exactly. Yeah.
So. Well, that's what I found interesting was I first became apparent in sort of one of the kind of earlier beach cove type levels where there was one approach I kept trying, and I kept going under. I kept kind of following the beach, and I was going under this archway of rock, and somehow I just attracted the guards from every side, and so I tried a head-on assault. Well, it wasn't so much an assault as swimming directly towards the camp and sneaking out in full view, which somehow worked better, even though that stupid guy with the helmet was standing in front of all of his friends. I shot him, and all I did was let everyone know where I was.
Yeah, it's good that it doesn't force stealth. I mean, you can play stealth up to a point, and of course you get the binoculars, and from far away you can kind of plan your attack. And it's really good because so many of these games, you basically jump into the shoes of another soldier, and you just feel like every other soldier. You feel like you're playing every other game. But the thing with Far Cry is it manages to quite successfully make you feel like a guerrilla. You're kind of hiding in the underbrush, and you've got to kind of attack them as a not necessarily stealthy approach, but you're outgunned, and you've got to kind of use the environment to obscure you and pick them off from a distance, and it really makes it different. That is the feeling of Far Cry, and it's something that Halo didn't have. And when we talk about the relationship between Far Cry and Halo, and obviously PC gamers comment about.
Oh yes, the game could have been.
Yeah, exactly, and that's quite a controversial claim. It's Halo could have been so much better if it had been like Far Cry. And I don't know what to take of that, but I think Far Cry is its own beast.
I think it's a slightly arbitrary viewpoint, to be honest. I mean,
but it's there because it's on the back of the box. It's there to inevitably.
And how many other games could have been, better, arguably, if you look at them from a certain perspective.
Well, exactly.
This is one of these things.
Jurassic Park Trespasser, which we jump into for a while.
Well, I look forward to that.
That could have been the Far Cry of its time. It could have stolen Far Cry's thunder 5-6 years before.
Yeah, all I will say, if you'll forgive me, is that the interface in that game was a far cry from any kind of good control mechanism. Sorry, that has to be said. And anyone who's played the game, I think, will bear me out on that.
Well, I mean, that'll be interesting because I always look at a game like Turok, and Turok's got dinosaurs. It's a great concept: dinosaurs, sci-fi, weaponry, lush jungles, but they always seem to screw it up somehow. Either they misjudge the content. Like the most recent one was just basically a military shooter. They stripped all the Native American
Jason
stuff out of
or
it.
John Turok or something, his name.
Yeah,
Turok was just kind of as if it was some kind of the local, the Turoks from Abertay or something. It's like no,
exactly.
It's not going to work. It's clearly a special name.
Yeah, and of course the earlier ones, which did have some of the more interesting weaponry and Native American stuff like the comics, were hampered by graphical issues like fog, or fog. The thing you always mention about jumping. The bit in Turok 1 where you've got all these totems you've got to jump on, and it's just I mean, it was in its infancy, but I think the idea, and maybe Jurassic Park Trespass was like this as well, the idea was great, didn't quite make it. Far Cry was the first one to say, this is how it should be done. This is how you do a linear but open world.
I mean, I think the key with Far Cry for me was that it kept, I mean, this was something I think that came up a few times when we were playing it, when we discussed, it didn't change the things that weren't broken. So guns, what have you, all worked fairly well. There was no major innovation there. It was planted in the way that the whole game world worked. That's where they were careful not to give themselves unnecessary problems. By doing something like, for instance, implementing a gigantic arm that knocks everything out of the way when you're trying to pick up a gun.
Yeah, I mean, we've all played Octodad. I think Jurassic Park. I've not played it yet, but I think I'll be keen to try it out.
I think you'll find Octodad has a greater degree of dexterity next to that.
I really have to play that game.
Oh yeah, but,
definitely. So I mean, we kind of look at Far Cry now. Obviously, at the time I played it in 2010, so long after it came out. It was 2005, so it was shortly after Halo, but it was really revolutionary. Obviously, it had its the CryEngine, which was this was the first game to use the CryEngine, so that was an important leap. The first game to kind of convincingly realise a lush jungle world. But I mean, we talked about how Turok had some good ideas that were poorly implemented, and I mentioned the combination of dinosaurs and sci-fi. In fact, I think in Turok 1 there's a cyborg T-Rex. And
there is, I think. Well, she said, yes, I think there is. There's definitely one in the third game because he's getting ridden by a cowboy.
Oh, Turok Evolution.
Yeah, he didn't need any more. Sorry, Evolution, not Turok 3. Sorry,
Turok Evolution,
But there is a T-Rex, I'm sure, in the first. Yes, no, there is, because I remember this now. Yeah, I think he's actually the penultimate boss in the first one.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I remember fighting. I thought that's a really good idea to have, dinosaurs, but mix it with technology. It's really a fantastic.
Well, there were cyber raptors as well. I can't remember, mecha raptors, I think they were called. And they were just raptors with metal mouths, and it's kind of like. I mean, one thing I found kind of funny about that, I don't remember if they do have guns and built into them. Someone should correct me if they did. I don't know how they would use them. I know they're smart, but
well, they can open doors, so surely
well, there you go. So they can reload
triggers of guns.
But
yeah, exactly.
One of the things I remember kind of laughing at before it ate me was the fact that they'd basically given it metal teeth, and I was like, teeth work pretty well already.
I know, it's classic. We can improve on nature.
We can.
And speaking of this is the theme, improving on nature. This is where the launching pad for the themes, and obviously the story is well, it's basically Die Hard meets I'm a Celebrity. But Bruce Willis in a Hawaiian shirt. And the story, and we kind of laughed at the story. But what about, because it's obviously a military environment, but it's not a military environment that has military weapons based on real military weapons. So we don't have Turok's kind of sci-fi weapons, but some of the enemies are quite clearly taken from kind of science fiction. I just want to say, do you find that the combination of really realistic weapons, really realistic environments that could conceivably exist, alongside kind of sci-fi plots and enemies, did that work for you, or did it?
Yeah, it really did work, because for me, the reason it worked for me actually was summed up, oddly enough, in the opening line of Fear, which I've never forgotten. The guy, I can't remember the characters who is saying it, but one of the military advisors at Crisis says, what's the situation? It's like, well, sir, our cybernetically enhanced psycho commandos have gone crazy, and then adds, this is why no one takes us seriously, and that for me was why Far Cry, worked. It's like this guy Jack Harbour. As soon as he opened his mouth, I lost all kind of any sense of trepidation or fear about this character in any way, and I just came to love him as a kind of a buffoon. And so whenever once mutants and cyborgs started entering this fray, I was like,
it didn't much matter because it didn't pursue realism from the beginning. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I found it really, I found it quite refreshing, because if it was just a military shooter set on an island, it could easily have been Arma 2 or whatever. That kind of thing. It was refreshing. I just think the kind of the sci-fi enemies, it worked well because you weren't just fighting the same humans. And in 2003 to 2005, that was the time where military shooters were taking off. The Tom Clancy games were, becoming, the Tom Clancy games had shifted from PC to console, you know, and they were accepted. So there's a lot of military stuff at the time, but this was kind of a breath of fresh air, you know. And I really enjoyed that. And you know, what wouldn't work for Far Cry 3? Far Cry 3 really does go for the realistic stuff, believable characters, you know, caught up in a situation which might reflect, you know, a clash of cultures, a deconstruction of globalization, you know, different political situations, but and if you put dinosaurs into that, it wouldn't work, because then suddenly the whole thing would fall apart.
Yeah.
But Far Cry 1 doesn't start you right. It doesn't, right from the start. We know that he's, you know, Jack Carver's a bit of a wisecracker. He's a bit, he knows about the conventions of you know, this kind of plot, you know, the evil science journal, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I was going to mention this, and I'll mention it now because we're going to get around to it. I didn't know about this individual, but you said, can you tell the viewers, tell the listeners about Brock Lesnar.
All right, yeah.
I'll put him up on the screen.
I get a picture of him, and to be honest, I mean, when I was trying to show you a picture of Brock Lesnar to compare, because you know sometimes with these games, like when, to diverge slightly, I like to think that Gary Barlow bears a certain resemblance to the Doom Marine when he's making a particular expression. But in order to make that comparison, I had to get a very good picture of Gary Barlow with the right expression.
Yeah.
For Brock Lesnar, the first one that appeared, actually, the more pictures you see of him, the more you realise he resembles the mutants, because his build, his head, his haircut, his hairline, even the whole thing. Yeah. If they didn't model those guys on Brock Lesnar, then I'm very surprised.
Yeah, I wonder if they paid him for his facial likeness.
Well, I think they maybe did, and I mean, like I say as well, it's not simply the resemblance of specifically the heavy class of mutants we're talking about.
Yeah.
Those of you who've played this might remember these as the rocket-toting
jerks
who don't go down after about 500,000 shotgun blasts to the face. But they definitely resemble him in terms of their tactical approach, which is basically just to run you down and crush you.
And Brock Lesnar was an MMA fighter, and that was his tactics, and he obviously didn't come into battle with that.
I should say
a rocket launcher or anything. But
he might as well have. I mean, this is the thing. He had the MMA equivalent. I mean, Brock Lesnar. I mean, I'm not by no means an expert on his career, but he was a wrestler in what federation I can't remember because it's changed so often. I think it was WWE now. But he was then in the Ultimate Fighting Championship in the heavyweight division, maximum weight I might add. He actually had to drop weight to fit into into the position, not into the ring. And he absolutely dominated for a while. He would one-punch opponents. And it was exactly like Far Cry, because if you took these things on in Far Cry face on, you were dead.
They headbutted you.
He didn't even see. They just kind of smashed you. And one of the things that struck me was that the similarities kept coming. The only fighters to ever take down Brock Lesnar did so by outmaneuvering him and essentially wearing him down.
And ironically enough, that's how you beat these mutants in the game. So it's
backed into a corner, shooting the only part of them I could see, which happened to be the gun. And
at the end, that was funny.
And it's a fight for survival, you know. And this is not an insult. In case Brock Lesnar happens to listen to this and would like to hunt me down, this should be taken as a compliment that you are a giant, you know, video game monster. So if anything, it's more power to his elbow, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we were kind of shocked with, and we mentioned this in episode 1 when we were prepping you guys for this, that Far Cry is hard, and I've played it before and I didn't realise how hard it was. But, I mean, obviously as a first time Far Cry person, tell me about your experience of starting off with Far Cry, hitting the wall as it were, and then powering through. I mean, that was quite an important...
The wall for me, I think, was the rocket coming towards my boat.
Oh, the beach, the beach level.
I thought I was extremely clever when I found the motorboat, and thought, "Ooh, I know what I'll do. I'll chart well again." And I thought I was also very clever because Jack Carver can not only steer and drive vehicles, but he can also shoot the guns on the back.
Yeah, he drives them with his feet, and then uses his.
So he steers with his mouth. He pedals with the feet, and the gun presumably with his hands. But the boat. I then realised very quickly that this game had an order to it. A guy with a rocket launcher will defeat a boat that is meandering around, you know. And because if you play games like Tomb Raider or Unreal Tournament or something like that, if you have a vehicle, you're in a position of power.
Yeah.
Except when the enemy is hiding, stealth, and has a rocket launcher and used to kind of like a sore thumb. And that's what Far Cry showed me, is that this game has a balance, checks and balances. If you have a vehicle, you have what you don't have. You're not better. You're not more powerful. You have more mobility and firepower. You don't have as much adaptability, and you certainly don't have any stealth.
And of course, you're basically inside an explosive device, because as soon as the vehicle loses all its health, because it's got its own independent health. As soon as it does that, and you're still in it, you're basically dead.
Well, I seem to remember what was it you put it when you were playing a segment and the enemy jeep mounted your jeep and it exploded.
Yeah, that was bizarre.
You implied that was their reproduction process.
Oh god, yeah.
And they created some kind of charred little baby, which was probably our corpse tumbling down the hill.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I think it's a difficult game, but I think it's improved our FPS skills, because towards the end of the game, or at least about 75% through the way of the game, we actually, it helped us become better.
Yes, it trained you, actually.
And I think that's something that's you don't really get that in games an awful lot.
I mean, I've been playing shooters now since, I played Doom at the ripe old age of 7 years old, which has not at all affected me. And I've been playing shooters as long as I've been playing video games, and I was very taken aback pleasantly when this game came along and kind of, trained me. It came on, I thought, oh no, crack shot with the rifle and the shotgun. And no, this game said, nope, sorry, that's not going to work. You have to learn, you have to expand your horizons.
Literally,
yeah.
Because and I think part of it is realizing that you're in this open world. I mean, before Far Cry came on the scenes, we were used to, trudging around corridors and that was fine for that kind of gameplay.
Like Doom 3 and what have you. And
all that kind of stuff. But I think with Far Cry, suddenly you've got these enemies that are attacking you from watchtowers miles away, and you've got to, cover your corners. It's almost like a combination of, it's a combination of Counter-Strike, but in an open world environment. And this was, I suppose, Battlefield was a bit like that, but
I suppose
Battlefield was multiplayer focused. This game was single player focused. Most of the military shooters at the time, the single player, if there even was one, was just basically a training for multiplayer. That's where the real challenge was. But Far Cry, it's I think it's first and foremost single player.
God, yeah, definitely.
And it really works. I think we've actually, it's trained us up better, and yet it doesn't seem to be too forceful. Like it does give you moments where you're constantly getting killed and but other than just having to plough through with the same strategy, that's the game telling you need to try a different strategy. And we used all the weapons in that game. It wasn't like, how in some shooters you get a weapon that you stick with all the time and that's it, and you don't bother with the others. This game, I think we did try every single weapon.
Yeah, I even after much protestation managed to get my shot at the MP5, which I quickly realised why you were telling me not to use it.
It's not good enough. I
think it got me killed, actually.
Yeah, and of course your sidekick values, and she can't shoot with it either.
Oh, God. Ow.
It's just such an underpowered gun. But I mean, unfortunately, I think the escort mission, if you want to call it that, because you're trying to crouch.
Lashingly called.
Yeah, you're kind of crouching in the bushes, trying to be all stealthy, like you've been throughout the whole game, and she's just standing there.
Just actually, before we get to Val, though, you've reminded me of something which actually I'd like to ask you a question. As a veteran player, having played it through again, because this is something you'll only know. I think you'll agree that the spotting towers caused maybe 70% of the stress that we had.
I think so. Yeah.
Would you say that they were broken with their snipers and rocket launcher guys, or do you think they were just the right difficulty?
I think. It's a fun. I don't think the snipers were broken. I mean, I was killed once or twice by snipers, and I had no idea of where they were coming from. But then again, that was my fault for not looking.
Yeah, and any good sniper, that's what they'll do.
Exactly. But the rockets, I don't think it's that towers are broken. I think it's that the rockets are broken. Because, I mean, they do a lot of damage like you would do, but when you fire a rocket, it seems awfully slow. Like when Brock Lesnar fires a rocket.
Oh yeah.
His rockets are like snail speed, as are yours. But the enemy rockets from the humans, not the mutants, are much faster, and they do a lot of damage, but they also completely disorient you. I mean, the rocket launcher is an excessively aggravating weapon.
I know.
And it seems that the enemy can use it infinitely better than you can. Like I'm convinced when it reloads, it doesn't reload. They just fire rockets, and they're just a pain. a complete pain. So I wouldn't say that the towers were broken. I think that the rockets, not so much broken, but
slightly
overpowered in the hands of the enemy. But when you used it, it was underpowered. I mean, there's nothing wrong with an overpowered weapon if you both have access to it. But
fair point.
I think it was the enemy's use of the rockets. And Brock Lesnar's rockets were fine because they didn't do as much damage, or they were slower, so they could.
And he tended to miss because he was firing them from the hip.
Aye.
Whereas those guys in the tower almost inevitably had a better view.
Well, had the viewfinder,
Yeah, they could range. They could take your range, whereas Brock would tend to unleash his rockets just as soon as he saw you, which sometimes meant you hit a wall or something.
Well, yeah, that's true. And sometimes they would actually shoot the enemies that were in front of them. Even though there was no enemy infighting in that game, I don't think.
No, unless it was the scripted, the mercs versus the mutants.
Oh yeah, that's true.
They would never turn on each other. They would always be set in the ways to
fight.
No,
it wouldn't be a la Doom where if one of them hit the other one, they'd start fighting.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it's an interesting kind of concept, the way that they've done it. But I'm just thinking, Far Cry 1, and you mentioned this before, you really liked the kind of three characters.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Carver, who's the character you are.
Yeah.
Val, who's your sidekick. She's kind of like a CIA spy, and then there's Doyle.
And Doyle.
And you could probably count Krieger, who's the mad scientist.
Oh yeah. Krieger.
But I mean,
you kind of warmed to those characters, didn't you?
I did. I really did.
And you wanted them to be,
I want to hear more from Val. I particularly want to see more of the chemistry between Val and Jack because it was just gold.
Yeah.
For right and wrong reasons.
Yeah.
It really was just. Well, you wanted to talk about Val in the gameplay terms, didn't you?
Oh yeah, I think I've said more or less what I want to say.
More or less,
she was,
yeah.
I mean, in the same way that Natalia from GoldenEye, and even when you mentioned that, I mean, if you say something like Natalia from GoldenEye, everyone groans.
The control level, for instance.
Yeah, okay, that's. And even Ashley from Resident Evil 4, there are moments when she, got in the way. And
I think the key with just to digress, Resident Evil 4, at least they used that sparingly, I suppose. At least Ashley was only ever in danger kind of superficially, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I suppose,
if you got it right, like, for instance, I made a game out of what weapons worked to free Ashley from the metal chains.
Yeah, I remember that.
I discovered everything up to the pistol works, the rocket launcher not so much.
Well, yeah.
But I had to find out. It still made the little clink, so it does work.
Yeah.
But she also died. So.
Charred body.
But I think with Val, the worst part for Val, because we agreed, was that not only is she as useless as Natalia, but who actually has let's not forget, has a magnum that she actually does use quite well. Val's insistence upon standing in front of your bullets and telling you that you're being shot whilst 10 guys are bearing down on you and she's doing nothing is slightly aggravating.
Yeah, I suppose
just
it's kind of
slightly.
Yeah, it's difficult to do escort missions. I think in a way it's good that they limited it to just one segment of a level, because otherwise it would have got really, annoying.
Which is already a fairly corny representation of a woman's sidekick in a game, but then they don't really do her any favours by.
And then again, everyone is a stereotype in that.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. As you say, Jack is essentially Bruce Willis with a Hawaiian shirt.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's kind of these stereotypes. But yeah, I think, Far Cry 1 really, it got everything right, and we can excuse its lack of storytelling because it purposefully does it. I mean, it's not a game that attempts to create a story and be serious and then introduce something completely incongruous like mutants. But, the mutants worked where they wouldn't work in Far Cry 3. But I think, I would play Far Cry 3 if I were you, because, I mean, I would maybe skip Far Cry 2 because for me that was a misstep. Too much open world, not enough tight mission, not enough focus. The third one I would definitely urge you to play because I think you'll get a lot of. I mean, obviously you won't get Jack, Val, and that, but you will still. I think you'll get a good game.
Oh yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty much at the end of this talk now, this episode. But I'm wondering what will we play next? I mean, have you got any idea of what would you like to play next? Any game in particular that you've always wanted to play that?
Well, oddly enough, I just the other day, I don't think this deal will be here by the time anyone hears this, but XCOM, the new XCOM, Enemy Unknown.
Oh, Enemy Unknown, yeah.
Was being sold on Steam for 75% off. I got it for £7.50
last
night.
Oh,
I do not work for Steam, nor am I affiliated with them. I just
you don't work for Brock Lesnar.
Or Brock Lesnar. I'm not a publicist, despite what you might think. But yeah, XCOM.
Oh, we should. I mean, because we've done 2 shooters now, and obviously if we went on to do Trespasser, which I think we'll maybe play.
Oh, I think
just as an
that
aside,
one we need to play. I forgot about it. Yes,
but we don't. Maybe we won't make the next episode that because it's too similar to Far Cry. I think if we did a completely different genre, and this is where I'm. This is a new experience for me because I'm not really a strategy person. I'm not really a. But I mean, I do like some strategy games. I mean, you know, you mentioned StarCraft. I've been playing StarCraft for a while, and you know all that kind of stuff. I think, XCOM would be a good one. We'll do XCOM next, but obviously there are other games we want to talk about in one episode. Fallout New Vegas.
Oh yes, maybe have a couple more people on.
We'll try and get. Well, yeah, absolutely. So, that we'll maybe make that an episode, but. Yeah. Maybe XCOM will be the next one.
Maybe.
So yeah. All right. Well, I think that's everything.
Yeah, keep watching the skies for those aliens.
Yeah.
And prop.
He doesn't fly in the sky. Can you imagine him on a glider or something like that?
As his publicist, I like to.
Oh, so you are his publicist.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Join us next time, and we'll mention XCOM. We'll talk about XCOM. So this is LizardGenes,
and this is Wadanny.
Hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Bye bye.